This guy's a stud. So let me welcome in Walker Buehler. Walker, thanks so much for joining me, man.
What's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm great. So not to put you on the spot, but right off the top, we got some trivia, and there's a leaderboard for this show, and, you know, let's just see how you do. You got 60 seconds, all right?
Yep.
All right. Ready? Let's go. Who's your first MLB strikeout against?
Charlie Blackmon.
Yep. First MLB batter faced?
Carlos Gonzalez.
Ooh. First MLB home run allowed to?
Mark Reynolds.
First MLB win against?
Philadelphia Phillies.
Number of pitches you threw in your first MLB start?
78.
89. Jersey number for your debut?
64.
Yep. Who relieved you in your first MLB start?
Yimi Garcia.
Ross Stripling. Where was your first away game?
That I pitched in?
Yeah.
Ooh. Maybe Philly.
San Fran. Who was
San
the opposing starting pitcher in your first start?
Oh, I don't remember his name. I can see him.
All right.
It was against the Marlins. I don't know that one.
That's it. That was Jarlin Garcia.
Yep, that's right.
That's not, you know, that's a tough one to remember. All right.
With the Giants.
Yes. Pretty good there. You were on a roll, and then, you know, then you fell off, but, you know, fine.
They got tougher.
So Walker, you went to Vandy, and I was looking at the roster your freshman year, and we know so many of the same people. Connor Harrell, Kevin Zomek, Adam Ravenel, Tony Kemp, Mike Yastrzemski. I mean, just a great bunch of guys won. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about that team and what, you know, Vanderbilt is such a dominant pitching program. I feel like it sets you up better once you get to pro ball because you were around a bunch of guys like that and were part of a rotation in college that was so good.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is when you're around guys of that kind of quality consistently, you're going to push each other, right? And in pro ball, that's kind of what happens. You know, you're with a guy that is you know, a prospect next year, and you want to pitch well. And being on a team like that in college, I think sets you up well to A, handle that, and B, learn how to still be a good teammate throughout that, I think.
Yeah. So there's two guys there now at Vandy, Kumar Rocker, Jack Leiter. One, you know, talk a little bit about those guys, but I'm going to put you on the spot and say, if you're a big league GM and have the first overall pick between those two guys, who are you going to go with?
Oh no, they're both extremely talented. Obviously, they kind of profile a little bit differently, right? Kumar's a big physical guy, more of the two pitches, or now he's had the little cutter in between, so kind of three pitches with a changeup sometimes. But Leiter's kind of the typical, you know, pitchability over stuff, but obviously he has big boy stuff as well. So, you know, it's kind of interesting going back to when we were playing there. Reminds me a little bit of Carson Fulmer and myself, in that Carson was big with the breaking ball and the big heater, similar to Kumar, and I was kind of more of the pitchability guy. But I think Jack has better stuff than I did at that point for sure. So I'm gonna have to be a little biased and go with him. But obviously, I think whoever gets Kumar is going to be extremely happy as well.
So I know what the relationship is like with your teammates in college. It's so, you know, it's just different. You're like a family in college. And part of that family your freshman year was Mike Yastrzemski. And now you guys are in the same division and playing against each other. What is it like to face him on the field? And then, like, are you guys battling on the field and then going out to dinner later that night?
You know, somewhat. If a schedule will allow it, I don't think that's something that we'd be opposed to. We tried to set it up and then kind of messed it up last time we were in San Francisco. But, you know, guys that played at Vandy, we all seem to kind of keep in contact, especially when we're playing against each other. You know, DP and I getting to play together now, and then they have a bunch of guys over there. So kind of interesting. It happens to be a team in our division, but we get to see them a lot. And I think that, you know, the more you pitch against a guy, the less of a teammate they are. So I remember the first couple times I faced Yaz, there's a little bit of like hesitation or whatever. You don't feel like, of anybody, you don't want to hit that guy in the head, right? But, as time kind of goes on, I think they get a couple of hits off you, and that stuff kind of goes away.
And I talk about this a lot because, one, it's the highest level I experienced. I never got to the major leagues. So I bring it back to the minor leagues a lot. And, baseball is unique because it's really the only sport where everyone goes through it. Everyone goes through some sort of minor league system. And you pick up a ton of stories and a ton of memories along the way in the minor leagues. And what's something in your mind that sticks out to you from your minor league career, some story that you have that'll stick with you forever?
I do remember Springfield AA, where you're in the Texas League. I remember we were supposed to drive home. It was only like 3 hours back to Tulsa from there. So kind of nice travel that whole league, and a tornado started ripping through. So we ended up having to stay at a different hotel than we had stayed in, like 10 miles closer to Tulsa in Springfield, an extra night, then drive the next morning, play the next day. But the different reactions that you'll get out of guys at different points in the season when they're struggling or we're struggling. A lot of guys just wanted to roll right through and kind of take our chances, I think more jokingly than anything. But there were a few guys that were not afraid of that tornado at all.
So then you get to the big leagues, and you've been here for a few years and having a successful career this far. And one thing you do and that everyone talks about is that you wear tight pants. But what I want to ask you about is Gavin Lux, who decided to, when you started to wear tight pants, when did you find this out? Were you like out there and you're like, wait, why is Gavin wearing tight pants? Like, what's his deal?
No, well, I mean, I will confirm they are mine. So I did have to have part of that. I had some input in that process. So Gavin obviously is a special talent, but was struggling a little bit in the beginning of the year. So I told him, listen, I wear these because they make me feel athletic. They make me feel big. So why don't you give them a go? Maybe it'll make you feel a little bit better out there. He tried them, didn't hate them, and then I think they kind of got left in his locker, and I guess he rocks them when I pitch. I didn't know that he was going to start doing that only on my start days or for sure on my start days, but we were just trying to give him a different look and kind of kickstart his hands and his head a little bit. So no, it's worked out well for him. He's gotten hot and started playing really well for us.
That's what I talk about a lot, man. Baseball is so mental, and at any time you can do anything to get your head off of what you're focusing on. You'll be just fine. So I know you get asked all the time about the tight pants, but one thing I want to ask you is, have you ever been asked at a worse time than in the NLCS after a loss somebody brings it up? Is that the worst that's ever happened?
Yeah, I think the only time the only way that could have been worse is if it was on a later round of the playoffs, maybe. But yeah, it was pretty tough. I know Michael pretty well, Duarte, and he likes to ask the little funky questions and stuff like that. But yeah, it just wasn't the time and wasn't the place for me.
So you're now a part of the most dominant, ridiculous rotation in baseball. That involves you, Clayton Kershaw, Trevor Bauer, David Price is there, Dustin May, unfortunately out now. But I want to ask you about each pitcher and something that you've learned from them. So, and I'll start with, the GOAT, one of the GOATs, Clayton Kershaw. What's one thing that you've learned from him that sticks with you?
I think he's the guy that I would say has kind of taught me how to be a pro and go about dealing with the season and the ups and downs and things like that. Obviously, I don't know how publicized it is, but Kershaw's routine is something kind of to behold and a special thing in terms of how long he's done it and the time and investment that he puts into being what he is. So being able to watch that, I think is the biggest thing for me.
And then you have sort of a different relationship with DP, David Price, because he's a Vandy guy and very vocal about Vandy and going back. So I'm sure you had met him before you guys are teammates. What's one thing from him that you've learned?
Yeah, the biggest thing with DP is I finally got some backup, right? A lot of the guys are tired of hearing about college, and Kirsch makes me refer to it as pre-pro ball. I'm only allowed to say college once a day. But now I've got DP there as some backup. So, outside of the on the field stuff and kind of watching him do his thing and deal with, the little injuries and things that he's had this year and how he's handled that obviously has been, as good as somebody can handle stuff like that. But, having some backup has been the biggest thing for me.
And then you have a new guy come over, fresh off a Cy Young award. That I don't know if you knew him well before he came over. What's one thing having him on the team this year that you've enjoyed?
Yeah, I knew Trevor a little bit. I wouldn't say super well, but knew him and spoke to him every once in a while. But I think the biggest thing about Bauer is just the attention to detail, and there's a lot of people that make this big thing about all the wacky stuff he does or whatever, and his routine and the weighted balls and all that, and that's all well and good. But I think the biggest thing is just how he can quantify all these things to himself, and he take certain measurements and things like that to kind of know where his body's at and trust those numbers more than his feel, I think sometimes, which is interesting. That's not how many guys do it in our game or have in the past, but at the end of the day, he's doing the same things. He's just doing it more detailed, and learning that and watching that has been really cool.
And growing up watching baseball and being a huge fan, I grew up and fell in love with baseball and watching Mark Pryor, and he's now your pitching coach. What has that experience been like? Because I'm sure growing up you got to watch him too. So what's it been like having him as your pitching coach?
Yeah, there's kind of that aura still when you first meet him, right? He's still Mark Pryor, maybe the biggest prospect that ever was, and did some unbelievable things in the major leagues as a player. So to have that kind of experience and things like that has been awesome, having him with us and him kind of learning and growing with us as well, right? It's his first big league pitching coach job, and to be handed the staff that we have and the guys that he's been able to help develop with Julio and Dustin and Gonsolin and some of our younger guys and myself truly. So, and then to also have Clayton Kershaw and Rich Hill and Hyun-Jin Ryu and guys that he didn't have to do a whole lot with, I think has been a perfect storm and super beneficial for all of us.
So you got to pitch in a World Series against the Rays recently, and you obviously an incredible series. And one game that sticks out in everybody's mind is the game that Blake Snell got pulled. You guys come back, you guys win. That's the series. And I heard you say about it before in an interview that sometimes to a fault, when a coach comes out to get you, you'll give some brushback, and you'll kind of give them a little bit of an argument. Is there one time that sticks out to you that maybe you went a little too far, or is there like one thing that really sticks out that you've done in the past?
I don't know. They do a pretty good job of kind of sitting me down and making sure I kind of know my place and whatnot. But they'll let me get a little emotional and then say, hey, like, you're still coming out of the game. But no, that was an interesting thing that, the way that they handle their pitching and things like that. Obviously, I don't want to get too deep into it. It's kind of gone now, but they had so much success in how they operate. And, a lot of people want to criticize them for doing something like that after the fact or after we score a couple runs. But, that's how they got where they were. And we like to think that we played well and we're able to win.
So then this year, you guys have one of the best rosters in the history of this game to start the year. And obviously, you guys go through some injuries. Cody's back now. Dustin May's out for the year, but still one of the best rosters of all time. And then some news comes out a few weeks ago that one of the greatest players in the history of the game, Albert Pujols, is going to be joining the Los Angeles Dodgers. Were you guys in the locker room as surprised as the rest of the world that he was coming to your team?
I don't want to say super surprised. Obviously, we trust our front office to kind of go and get guys and plug them in when we need to. And with the injuries that we had, we needed kind of that, stabilizing kind of force, and we were playing poorly. And I think his kind of aura and energy coming over, and Albert's an awesome guy to have in the clubhouse. Just the way that he kind of moves and operates and communicates has been awesome. And the guy's been in a lot of clubhouses for a long time. So we started winning some games after we got him and Yoshi, and we've enjoyed having both of them around.
I'll tell you the way Albert moves. Slowly, a little slowly. So when he comes over, obviously one of the greatest of all time, but with a locker room that he doesn't really know, and it happens in the middle of the season. So is there something like when he gets there that he sits you guys down and talks to you in the locker room?
No, we got pretty fortunate. Our third base coach, Dino Ebel, had been with the Angels for a long time and knew Albert really well. Obviously some of our older guys have played against him a lot and know him, kind of from on the field stuff. But one of our infield coaches, coordinators, Jose Vizcaino, knows him really well. So I think he had some familiarity with some of our guys, maybe less so with our players, but with our coaches for sure. And I think it made it probably a little bit easier for him to settle in. And I think him not having to leave his house and drive up from Orange County to LA every day is a little bit different than having him live in some apartment somewhere across the country. So I think it was kind of a best case scenario for him and for us.
You have achieved a feat that not a lot of people do, and it's winning a College World Series and a Major League World Series. And we talked about it a little at the beginning, how it's kind of a different culture in college. So what was what was it like winning at both levels? Like people can't relate to winning a college. Really, people can't relate to either, but a lot of people can't relate to winning both. So talk to me about winning a College World Series and the difference in winning a Major League World Series.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's some similarities, right? You've got to have good players, and your good players have to play well at the right times and kind of step up. And I think all of that kind of starts from within a clubhouse and creating a culture. And at Vanderbilt, that's a huge thing. Super emphasized, super talked about our culture and the way we want to handle ourselves and treat each other, treat people on the street, right? And in pro ball, there's probably less of that, but I think in LA and in this clubhouse, that's a big thing, especially when you're led by somebody like Kirsch and Doc for that matter. So, we create this culture and try and stick to that, and everyone has a role and knows what they do. And at the end of the day, ended up playing really well at the right times and kind of battling back from the 3-1 in Atlanta and then getting it done against Tampa. So, I think the culture and the atmosphere inside that clubhouse is a huge part of both of those, but certainly different when one's in college and it is what it is, and you've got guys that are never going to play again, and then you do it in the major leagues and you're the world champions is kind of a different thing. So both obviously extremely special and something that I'll never forget.
Which dog pile was better after the last out?
Oh, we did. In the COVID times, we didn't really.
Yeah, I know you didn't. I was wondering about that. I mean, obviously, you get the last out of the World Series. It's awesome, but it's kind of like, can we celebrate this?
And I am sad that we didn't get to, but part of me is extremely happy. The dog piles, I think I've been a part of 2 or 3, are some of the scariest things that you'll ever go through. If you get in the wrong spot in that dog pile, man, it's one of the worst.
So we've talked about the rotation that you're a part of now. What is it like pitching in the middle of that rotation and having, it doesn't let up behind you, in front of you? Is there like a competitive nature to pitching in that rotation? Like, all right, Kersh just went out and threw 8 scoreless. Let's see if I can top that.
Yeah, I think there has to be, right? I think that's part of the culture element, right? We've had that here before with Rue and Rich and Kersh and Woody and Strip, and a lot of guys have had success here, and this is just kind of a new iteration of that. And obviously with Dustin, out of it takes him out of it. But at the beginning of the year, you had 5 guys that were all throwing the ball well. 4 guys probably with the exception of me. I wasn't throwing it very well, so. Obviously Julio has been a guy that I've kind of grown up with and come up with. He actually beat me to the big leagues, but this is our first year kind of being in the rotation at the same time for a while. And it's just fun. Obviously, Bauer brings a whole different kind of energy and enthusiasm for what he gets done, and then Kirsch is kind of the classic stoic veteran. But I try and find myself somewhere in the middle of those two and go out and throw the ball well.
One of the best rotations of all time, not including yourself. You get to a Game 7 of the World Series. Who gets the ball?
Not including me?
Not including you.
Any pitcher or guys on our team?
On your team.
I don't know who's starting that game, to be honest with you. Obviously, Kershaw and Bauer, and those are the kind of guys ahead of me, right? But, what Julio did in the playoffs last year is hard to kind of overlook. So I think it would probably be some combination. Obviously, the later in the year we get, the more we do that kind of stuff. So I guess we'd all probably just throw a couple innings and then let Kenley come in for the ninth.
Yeah, Kirsch to Walker to Bauer to Julio isn't the worst combination in the world for a Game 7, that's for sure. Hey, so on Twitter during UFC fights, you get very active. Where did your love of UFC start?
I've always kind of been interested in it, and weirdly enough, I met a comedian named Theo Vaughn that I kind of started following his stuff, and got to meet him, and through that started listening to some podcasts, and then got into Joe Rogan podcasts and all this stuff. So it was kind of a weird rabbit hole that started with Theo Vaughn. But no, the past couple of years, I've definitely gotten pretty big into it and started watching pretty intently. And I think this COVID thing and the way they handled it was probably the best of any of the sports, kind of getting back and figuring out how to be safe and still put on events. And I think for a lot of people, that's probably the first time they sat down and watched a UFC fight. And for me, it certainly was a time that I started watching them a lot more intently and more often. And, I just think it's a cool sport. I think all the different elements of it and the different strategies that guys have, I think it's cool, and definitely excited to watch some of the fights coming up.
They also did it so well because they just bought an island and went out into the middle of nowhere and started fighting there. Who are some of the guys, you mentioned some fights coming up, who are some of the guys you're looking forward to watching, and who are some of the guys that got you into it when you first started getting into UFC?
Israel Adesanya obviously is the big one coming up that I can think of. The McGregor-Poirier fight I'm excited for. I think one of the coolest parts about the UFC is not, you don't have to have the guy that you want to watch fighting every week, right? Conor McGregor doesn't fight every week, and you can still watch and enjoy it and become a fan of a couple new guys while you're doing it. So Michael Chandler coming over, I think has been pretty cool. Obviously, him losing this, a couple weeks ago was kind of tough, but I think he's been a cool addition to the UFC. And him being a Nashville guy or living in Nashville, I've got some people that have met and interacted with him and seems like a pretty quality dude. So right now, probably him and Izzy are my two favorite guys.
Who's one player on the Los Angeles Dodgers that would transition well into the UFC?
Ooh. I've got kind of three. We have this conversation, right? The three guys on our team that you'd want in a bar fight with you, right? That's kind of a class one. Two of them are now retired, but in their prime, I would take David Freese would be up there. Russell Martin is extremely, surprisingly flexible and athletic.
Okay.
And then my third would probably be Joe Kelly. I think he's got the body. He could probably fight in a small weight class, but we've seen what he's done in some of the brawls. So I'd take Joe Kelly for sure.
So one thing I ask everybody when they come on is some career moment sort of questions. So I want to ask you your first one. What was your welcome to the MLB moment?
You probably asked me about it already. The Mark Reynolds Grand Slam. My second career outing. I remember. I think I threw him like 7 straight fastballs. I couldn't throw strikes. I had no idea what I was really doing, and I threw him a fastball in. He hit it. I thought I broke his bat. screamed loud in excitement and it went over the fence. So that one was the moment I kind of realized I was dealing with a different animal than I had in the minor leagues for sure.
What has your most memorable play been on the field?
Memorable play. I do remember some of the things Kike Hernandez was doing in my first start in the big league. So in 2018, I remember he kind of spot started at shortstop and made 3 or 4 of the best plays to this day that I've seen made, behind me. So I think those are probably the biggest ones that weren't kind of through my eyes, I guess.
And a moment that has stood out to you in your career that has taken place with teammates off the field?
Ooh. Honestly, this bubble thing that we were in last year was pretty interesting. I kept telling my fiance, like, this is like summer camp for me. Like, I love this because we were so close and our hotel rooms are next door to each other for a month. Everybody's wives and girlfriends and whatnot are there and kids. So the bubble situation in Texas was obviously a challenge in a few ways, but one of the more memorable things that I think I'll ever go through. Hopefully we never have to do it again, but it was pretty cool.
What would you guys do? Is a lot of video games played in the bubble? Like, what do you do in the bubble?
Yeah, there was a lot of video games. We were actually on the green of a golf hole down there in Dallas, and they wouldn't let us play golf, but we would kind of stand and chip and make one guy run out there, grab a couple of the balls and bring them back. But no, it's cool to wake up, walk outside. You've got 6 or 8 of your teammates out there eating breakfast and sit and hang out and chip a few golf balls and then go and try and win a playoff game. So that was a good time. And obviously we kind of thrived in that situation. And no, I enjoyed it.
All right, before I let you go, Joe Kelly, you got as your fighter that would transition best into the UFC. Over on the Astros, Carlos Correa hosts a MMA UFC sort of podcast. Who you got? Those guys love each other. Who you got? Joe Kelly, Carlos Correa head-to-head in a UFC battle.
I don't know. Size is a big deal, but I'm not going to not go with my guy. So I still think Joe Kelly, he's taking on bigger guys. He's taking on, what was the guy's name? Tyler Austin back in the day.
Yeah.
So Joe Kelly Fight Club is alive and well.
Walker, thanks so much for joining me, man. I really appreciate it. Good luck the rest of the way and come back on whenever. I'd love to have you back.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.
Of course, see ya. Thanks for watching. If you love flipping bats, swinging 3-0, or just talking ball, join us. Call us at 213-537-9339 with your questions. We have a weekly guest, and we have a lot of fun, so hit that subscribe button.